Not all governments are reactionary and not all protests are revolutionary. We have to look beyond the appearance and understand the essence of these different movements and phenomena going on and understand the class nature. Who's funding them? Why are they getting funds? What are they fighting for?
Mira que ya viene la revolución, para que se asustan será pa' mejor. Es el pueblo entero el que ya está gritando, ¡viva la revolución!
Iranian nuclear weapons development.
They have turned the island into a communist hellhole.
The experiment in Venezuela has failed completely.
So this is a book called Headstrong, How Psychology is Revolutionizing War. And this is by Michael D. Matthews, who is a prominent military psychologist. And one of the chapters in this book discusses winning hearts and minds, which is the entire point of influence operations and psychological warfare at the end of the day. So one of the things that they do, that they're using, and this book is from 2014, and all of my comrades need to be paying attention to this right here, right now. Social network analysis. Look that up and learn what that is, because that is one of the things that is being weaponized against us. This is a way of identifying the interactions, the patterns, the human relationships in social networks. Not just social media networks, but social networks as a whole. And what this does, it helps them identify who are the people that wield the social power. Residente wields social power. So when you look at all the artists, and again, coming back to the role of the artists in color revolutions and counter-revolutionary activities, how has Residente's social power been used and weaponized against any sort of movement toward actual liberation for Puerto Rico? And also the rest of Latin America. And I'll close there. Thank you.
Wow. I love when we get into the psychology talk about it, because I think that's one of the elements that is so underrated when we're talking about imperialism. It's so psychological. We live in an age where we're in fourth dimensional warfare, fifth dimensional warfare, where they have people like Residente convoluting political ideologies, saying some things that are, I'm not sure if it was Yamir or Libre who said it, saying things that are true, but at the same time saying things that are false. And that's one of the best ways to lie. Like I'm fucking horrible at lying, but like if you talk to people who are really good at lying, a lot of their lies are based on some element of truth, but then there's one thing, like two truths and a lie, right? And I feel like in many ways, that's kind of like what Residente does, is that he is pointing out all these things that are correct, but then putting in this one, by the way, we should invade Venezuela. What? And it's just like, it's crazy to me. So one thing I want to do is I want to share two quotes before we pass it to Comrade Libre and Comrade Pedro. This is one quote, I think relevant to our discussion. This is Vladimir Lenin. Quote, "The nearer we come to the full military suppression of the bourgeoisie, the more dangerous becomes to us the high flood of petty bourgeois anarchism, and the struggle against these elements cannot be waged with propaganda and agitation alone. The struggle must also be waged by applying force and compulsion." So that is another quote from Lenin. This is another quote from Stalin on the foundations of Leninism. "The state is a machine in the hands of the ruling class for suppressing the resistance of its class enemies. In this respect, the dictatorship of the proletariat does not differ essentially from the dictatorship of any other class, for the proletarian state is a machine for the suppression of the bourgeoisie. But there is one substantial difference. This difference consists in the fact that all hitherto existing class states have been dictatorships of an exploiting minority over the exploited majority, whereas the dictatorship of the proletariat is the dictatorship of the exploited majority over the exploiting minority. Briefly, the dictatorship of the proletariat is the rule unrestricted by law and based on force of the proletariat over the bourgeoisie, and a rule enjoying the sympathy and support of the laboring and exploited masses." This is from The State and Revolution, quoting Lenin, and this is Stalin's work on the foundations of Leninism. So I wanted to share those because I think those are very crucial in understanding our ideological disagreements with a lot of anarchists or people like that. I wouldn't even say he's an anarchist at this point. I think he's fucking CIA or some shit. But a lot of people who play that kind of argument where it's like all governments are bad, all protests are good. And I always say not all governments are reactionary and not all protests are revolutionary. We have to look beyond the appearance and understand the essence of these different movements and phenomena going on and understand the class nature. Who's funding them? Why are they getting funds? What are they fighting for? And I think this is where we can begin to sort of critique Residente from, because he's sort of, doing a catch-all.